if you could introduce your clinic shortly in few words, what makes you special, different, and what makes you the longevity clinic versus anything else that is using the word longevity today?
I'm representing Clinique La Prairie, which is a clinic we started in Switzerland by a doctor, Dr. Nians, who invented the cellular therapy. So this was, we didn't know what was stem cell in 1931st, but the guy was seeing that it was working. So, and then we created the first, the first line of luxury skincare, La Prairie. We started then to put a very strong medical part into what we were doing. Now we have a full-fledged hospital with 55 doctors, 34 practice, operating room. So the first, let's say, medical spa, which then became a full hospital. And then 10 years ago, I started to create this, I like to call ecosystem, which is now made of big clinics like the one in Switzerland. We just opened in China. We have one coming in Amala very soon. Longevity, urban longevity clinics, which we call Longevity Hub by Clinique La Prairie. Product technology, which is another company which is called Holistic Health. And now we're launching a fund, which is called Clinique La Prairie Longevity Fund, which is investing in technology. So this is shortly.
Super.
Yeah.
Kate?
Hello, I'm from Hook. So we are a clinic and performance center in London. We were founded and inspired kind of by the approach that comes from elite sports. So our focus for every client is on optimization and is on marginal gains. You can be 1% better tomorrow than you are today. And over a period of decades, that will add up and that will create a better health span for you, a longer health span for you. So we have an integrative approach. We have a team of doctors from multiple specialities, nutritionists, fitness professionals, and psychologists. And we integrate all of these pillars into each and every client so that we don't make sure that no kind of area is left untouched to ensure that they're getting access to the best science, the best practices, as practiced by some of the top athletes in the world, or also in some of the top hospitals, and we give them access to the most cutting-edge treatments that are data proven, safe, and available under our regulations.
Right.
George.
So I am coming from Chenot. Chenot is a 50-year-old company. I still define it as a wellness company with a proactive approach to health. So we implement programs where we're trying to exercise health. I define health in terms of functionality, resilience, not as the absence of disease. We are having retreat settings. We blend science, technology, innovation with luxury hospitality, and we deliver it with warmth and as an experience. And this is what makes us different to everybody else.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah, so Fountain Life was founded by myself, Peter Diamandis, Bob Hariri, and Tony Robbins. And it was really a outgrowth of literally a meeting that we had about 8 years prior to today, where we were noticing the amazing amount of explosion of technology that was available. But the problem was there's a clinical latency gap, particularly in the U.S. and with very deep respect to Europe. You guys have been long ahead of the United States in preventive care, just across the board. And the U.S. ranks number 64 in longevity, so we have a big lift in the U.S. to get to where we have to go. But what we were realizing is this clinical latency gap, meaning from the time the technology was available to the time you could access it in the United States right now is about 17 years. And so that's an FDA-approved technology. That's not something in the lab. That's something that the FDA says, you can go do this, but until it actually gets into the clinic, it's about 17 years. So our goal at Fountain was to create a system where we could employ the latest detection technology for asymptomatic disease, and then employ the optimization technologies and techniques to reverse that disease process or arrest it as early as possible, and in the process do high-performance aging. And then at the same time, be an avenue where you can go and access some of the latest FDA-approved or FDA-trialed technologies in a clinical setting where we've deemed those to be safe. And ultimately, we believe we're a data company because we collect an amazing amount of data on people. We collect about 250 gigabytes of data on people that come through our process. And we're heavily into AI in terms of those analyses to allow our clinicians to be able to see in depth what the health of the patient is. And this is the idea of moving into precision medicine. Because right now we do population health, generally speaking, in the world, and that works great, except when you get to like the United States, where everybody's genetically distinct, and we have about every person on the planet that from every nationality there. And I think the point being is that medicine has now moved to that point that we need to accelerate precision medicine. And the problem is the gatekeepers right now and the governments are looking at population health. And I understand the economics behind that, but our client population really wants those N of 1 results.
And you were talking also about scientific discoveries, but earlier at the conference. But there's so much at the moment in the science. We have Aubrey de Grey, and we have also many other scientists that are working on the cutting-edge technologies, from CRISP to stem cells, exosomes, and so on. But not everything is actually ready yet to be in the clinic, especially to be used by doctors. And again, this is where I think it's a very important role for the medical clinics, especially with the emphasis of medical, because we have to comply with local regulations. We have to work with certain, the doctors don't want to lose their license. So in most countries, we are also careful in terms of what we're implementing. But among all the biomarkers that are available today and also interventions, which is the one that you think in your clinic differentiates you from others, or that you think that it's the most interesting today?
But I think I want to come back to what William just said. I don't think it's a question of just one single biomarker. I like to simplify the longevity process in a clinic into three very simple steps: the assessment or diagnostic, the intervention, and the follow-up. I think what is important is that we all are very clear in the fact that superficially we are all the same, but in reality we are very different. So I think that this process is what makes us different. We have, if you want to talk about diagnostic and assessment, we just launched a longevity master assessment. It's 300 biomarkers. They are the most sophisticated one. Our clients can also pay for this because all these biomarkers are expensive. But beside what we do, 350, 80, I think what is important is, you were calling it precision medicine, is the fact that the intervention must be customized for each of us.
Personalized.
And personalized for each of us. And when, maybe, Joanna, we're going to come back to this point, because we are, I think, here at the crossroad about being considered as something serious, which we are, then maybe we can say 30 trillion, 5 trillion, but what we are doing is super important, because if you continue like this, it's going to be a big problem for society. But this idea of personalized medicine, serious medicine, I think is what makes us different. And when I hear this general recommendation, you should do this to live longer, you should do that, unfortunately, it's there where we have a problem. And beside the biomarker is this idea of having a serious process, let's call it longevity process, which make the intervention personalized. And then we can talk about the follow-up, which I think is the big gap.
Yeah, it's a very important point, because also I think what differentiates longevity clinics from any other place is really the idea. And I will ask you also whether this is, but I will come back to my previous question, but so that you really measure results, so that not only you're saying what works, but also you have the way to really measure that whatever you recommend, whether this is stem cells or this is, music therapy or this is anything else, whether this has really an impact on any aspects of your health. And as Simona was saying, you can have 300 biomarkers. It's just there are so many questions that I have to be very careful to ask. But today you can measure every single organ separately, and it's actually tempting. On the other side, somebody has to pay for that, and it's not insurance, it's not governments yet. So we have to be careful on selecting the right set to be able to, for the client to be convinced that this is good for him, her. Not to omit something, we don't want to measure, kind of skin aging and then somebody has heart attack 2 days later. So we have to be very careful in terms of looking at all this. But among the biomarkers that are more, like every week we can actually read about new biomarkers and new treatments. Which of those, Simona, in terms of interventions, which one do you think in your clinic are most effective today that you see results on your clients?
Let's say if we go back, we've been in 2016 the first clinic to, let's say, force our clients to do genetic test. So this has been super useful, and now it's quite basic. At that time, it was not. We've been the first in 2019, at least in Europe, to do epigenetic tests for all our clients. So I think, again, even in terms of assessment, we should be really personalized. It's really depending on the age of the clients. It's really depending on the objective of the clients. We now launch again this longevity master assessment, which is putting together glycans, metabolomics, genetic, epigenetic, epigenetic on stress. So it's a big testing rack. And then there is a question about what our clients are understanding. I give you another example. We were at a certain point, we bought a genetic lab because we wanted clients that are staying clinic like us, for 1 week. So we wanted to have the result of the test before the client was leaving, because we didn't want to drop the test in an email, in an inbox, and say, now look at your 300 biomarkers in your emails, and people, they were not understanding. So our referent doctor is taking 2-3 hours, which I guess it's even more important than data, is even more important than artificial intelligence. I always say you need human to change human, and it's not a question of information, it's a question of transformation. So this idea, not only how many biomarkers, but how do you then communicate these biomarkers to the clients?
Kate, in terms of what are the most, you think, in your clinic, interesting biomarkers and interventions?
It's a complicated question. There are many biomarkers, and there's probably several layers to this answer, which are the ones that correlate best with longevity, which are the ones that are influenceable, which are the ones that are going to make a difference for that particular client, and which ones do we know are going to, which ones do we see making the biggest difference overall? I mean, the ones that correlate most with longevity and the ones that are most influenceable tend to be the ones that are linked with exercise, so VO2 max, muscle mass. Those are the ones we tend to work on a lot, because that's where we know you can make a lot of progress quite quickly.
And it's easy change.
And it's easy change. And you know that someone's health trajectory is going to improve if they improve those. But the one that I think is the most important is we work with a team of psychologists, and they've devised a psychometric and emotional resilience questionnaire for us. And that is really, really key to understanding that client and helping them make progress, because it's all about meeting the client where they are. And if someone's emotional resilience is down here, telling them to improve their VO2 max is not going to get you anywhere. You have to make sure that this is coming up so that they have the headspace to then address some of the other things that they may want to in their life. And so it's a complicated, people are complicated. And so in order to make sure that we provide the best kind of care for that person, we have to understand what's going on up here as well as everywhere else.
But you're only proving the point that it's multimodal. There's no one solution today.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's a multimodal, but I still believe that functional tests telling us a very big good...
Functional meaning VO2 max?
Functional, VO2 max, strength, postural assessment, cognitive ability. I think that's important. We have developed a molecular lab, so we have a lot of epigenetic insights, but I still value VO2 max more than anything else. And in relation to what we do, basically, we take you out of your comfort zone. So we are doing specific protocols to activate autophagy, address mitochondria. We work on senescence and senescent cells. This is what we do. We know that there's a Chenot method with calorie restriction, exercise, hypoxia, all combined. And this is why I said before to you that we are still a wellness company, because I think when you for longevity, you need to do the extra thing that we don't know yet what this is. And so I don't think me and us as a company, we belong in that space yet. That's how I feel about it. So the way we think
so you see longevity as a bonus of what you do?
I think, yes. And longevity medicine. And then what we do is we're trying to give the right signals to the body. Then the healing comes from your internal medicine. The body knows what to do. All we need to find out is what are these signals in terms of intensity, duration, and frequency.
And again, personalized.
Okay, now we have another question. How do you personalize? Because you have two people with the same diagnosis, they have completely different outcome. So to me, it's a problem. Second question is, how do you measure healthy life? Tell me what is normal and what is pathological. So the only things we understand is functionality. This is how, and this is how I drive the company. And I think this is very, very important because at the end of the day, what you want to have your independence as you get older. You want to be free and to be able to enjoy, to do the things that you used to do. And this creates happiness. Otherwise, you know, you become lonely, you die. So I think aging is inevitable, but decline is not. And this is where we should be heading, at least my company and other similar companies.
I think that's actually right. I mean, I think the idea is that matching healthspan and lifespan. Interestingly, you know, I don't know, I can give you a lot of biomarkers that we would target, but it is a multimodal approach. We're very heavy into imaging, whole body and brain MR, because what we've noticed is because we use a multimodal approach, our false positive rate drops down to about 4%, which is one of the common criticisms when you look at whole body imaging. In the United States, the advent of artificial intelligence when applied to MR is exploding. There are over 1,000 FDA protocols now that are approved, AI overlays for MRI in the US right now. So we are seeing this explosion of data. The data is a bit overwhelming sometimes, but one of the most interesting things, and the reason that I think we cannot get pigeonholed into particular biomarkers, there are some that are going to be stand the test of time, but I would argue we've looked at 5,000 patients with using cardiac CT angiography in the clinic setting, and we've done artificial intelligence analysis on that, and we use Clearly, we've been using them for 5 years, so we have a standard FDA protocol. We measure all the stable, you know, all your calcified and uncalcified plaque. We can give you a plaque score. But when we did a regression analysis and we looked at all the common cardiac biomarkers, the one that was most predictive for plaque was not cholesterol. It was hemoglobin A1C. Now, that's probably not a surprise to anybody on this stage, but the fact that we attempt so much attention to cholesterol as the driving biomarker for cardiovascular disease, and we tend to ignore some of the others, particularly in the United States. Everybody goes on a statin. You're required to be on a statin. The doctor gets a penalty if you're not putting on a statin. And I'm not saying statins don't work at reducing heart disease. They're really good at calcifying unstable plaque. But what we have seen in the 5,000 patients we've initially, and we're getting ready to publish on this, is that about 10 to 15% of people with cholesterol over 250 have zero plaque. And people with a cholesterol 100 have a lot of plaque. So my point is 15% of the people that walk through our doors have either moderate or severe coronary disease, and they're totally unaware of it. And that's why in the US particularly, heart disease is still the #1 killer, because we don't use the right tool set right now, because we're waiting for your symptoms to appear.
Exactly.
And right now, that's just not going to work. I mean, I think some of the AI analysis being done by Caristo right now out of the UK is some of the most amazing technology I've seen, because you could see vulnerable plaque for the very first time. So my point is that, you know, what we could almost definitively tell people, if you're over a 40, you need to know what your baseline is. And because we catch young males and women who are early postmenopausal with significant plaque and are totally unaware of it. I had one of Tony Robbins' patients came up, or members came up to me and said she was 57. She was in great health. She heard what we were talking about. One of her things, she came to our center and went through the cardiac testing, and she had a 98% blockage of her LAD, which was the main artery.
57.
Age 57, and she's postmenopausal because she went into early menopause. So that calls the whole question about hormone therapy, and should we be doing bioidentical hormones? And this is a controversial area, but the US FDA has just come out, and basically the original study that everybody hung their hat on for women's health was probably flawed, and so women should probably be on hormone therapy. And now this is very controversial, but I can tell you of the 75% of our physicians who are women, this is a staple for us. But once again, if you cannot measure it, you really cannot manage it. And I think what's hurting us in the United States is the big disease drivers are neurodegenerative, cardiovascular, cancer, and metabolic. And I think those, if we don't address those, then I think we're not doing our clients a service. So we try to give them the most information they can have in a context that they can adjust it.
And I think this is really, really important now for what we just said, because it's really, we can do sexy biomarkers like telomeres and whatever, stem cells, and also, different aspects of skin aging, but it's not really about mitochondrial health. But really, at the end of the day, we have to start with the very, very detailed preventive medicine and also personalized medicine tests. But even you say like MRI tests, I mean, every single hospital has MRI tests, but they don't analyze it in the same way. You do many other tests that you correlate, which they don't do. You are using AI to actually help you to analyze those tests, which they don't do. So many of the clients that come to you or to any of our clinics possibly went through other tests, but other doctors in the standardized ways of looking for kind of maybe immediate risk factor wouldn't even pick it up as a risk factor in 1 or 2 years. So the clinics, I can't emphasize it enough that it's really important to test and also to do the proper preventive testing before you go into any other interventions.
But if I add, Joanna, then of course you can do it outside, but I agree, William, with imaging, super important. But in terms of, for example, of the business model, this is very expensive.
Yeah.
I have 5 radiologists, I have a big,
very rough.
and with artificial intelligence, but this is fundamental. So if you want to do the proper assessment, you need to have imaging, and that's expensive.
It is. Well, so I think, so I'll just, I'm going to keep throwing the U.S. under the bus here, but we spend $5 trillion on healthcare in the United States. We spend 1/2 of the global spend for healthcare. Okay, so on 4% of the world's population.
Yeah.
And we rank like 64 for longevity. That's not a really good ROI. So I would argue it's not that we don't have the money to spend in the US, we just don't spend it properly.
We don't have enough of those, I would say, tests. Like you said, you have tested about 5,000 clients. We have tested about 3,000 clients. And you have a lot to share now, what you have seen, and how much money you can actually save to the economy. I don't think there's enough information for the decision makers at the governmental level to really understand it. And this is why we are spending more on treating diseases, which is much easier to understand than preventive diseases.
I want, if you allow me, Joanna, I would like to give a little bit of a different direction. I mean, I appreciate data. I think it's very important. I understand that tests are very, very important. We need to, and also create reference values for ourselves. But, are we defined by data as humans and statistics and report cards? Or should we be motivated by trying to avoid disease? Is that how we should be living? Or should we be living to have successful living? What should be our motivation? Happiness, fulfillment, joy. Why we keep, because I understand, but I hear continuously about data. I hear about diagnostics, and then we define the area longevity, and we need to do this. I think longevity is lifestyle. I mean, how we live our lives. I think that's the important thing. And I want to focus on this, and then I understand the expertise. That we are supportive partners, because who is optimizing at the end of the day? The client, not us. I
fully agree. But also, I think it's on one side is for the client to see the change, but also for the doctors. So far in most countries, it's not covered by insurance. In Switzerland, we can cover parts of that by insurance, but only the preventive part. But in most countries, it's not. So, but then changing it, and I agree with you, and I think all of you mentioned the psychological, emotional. I think we have Nika Palmerini also that studied the blue zones. I mean, we know that it's not only about it is also about movement, but it's not only about what you eat and whether you eat 60 supplements or maybe non-supplements at all. It's really about purpose and psychology. So maybe let's look at a different way. In longevity clinics, most of us, we would like to have our clients to come back, and also we would like to see the clients who see results, to measure the results, or even if not measure, we want the client to feel the result. So how important is the emotional, psychological, and also what do you do to motivate the client to actually start the journey? Because one thing in P4 medicine is participating. So we are not going to fix it for the client. I mean, the client has to be ready to change, has to be ready to make some sacrifice, give up on something or maybe start doing something they were not doing. So what do you do to motivate your clients to actually start the longevity protocols or longevity recommendations that you are giving?
So, may I start?
Yes.
So, I think it's a super good question, because I think where clinic like us, we are very, very poor is on the follow-up side. Also because, you know, and we are seeing it with GLP-1, a lot of I always mention this, why I decided to do this ecosystem. Because I was sitting with my client and I was asking them, so why do you come once a year, 1 week at Clinical Aperi? They were telling me, I come 1 week at Clinical Aperi so I can do whatever I want the rest of the year. And I said, sorry, that's not...
It's very true. But this is very true.
I mean, no, you know it.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
For our clients. So I said, this is not really the strategy. So and then we were trying to do follow-up with the app and with when you have certain type of clients, super complicated. So I said, the only way is to be physically present with my clients. So the vision is to have 40 longevity hubs in the major cities. If you're able to do all of them, we are basically covering 98% of our clients. So you have the big clinic for the big diagnostic and assessment. You have the follow-up in the longevity urban clinic. But the idea is to create continuation. Then to come back to your point, how do you activate this transformation? That's another key point, dear friends. If I now go in the center of St. Moritz, and I stop 100 people, and I ask them, do you know that you should move more, you should eat more salad, you should be more happy, you should be more curious? They always say, of course. So then the question is why they don't do it. So it's not a question of information. Education is super important, but it's not a question only of information. It's a question, again, of transformation. And I believe when you have a clinic like our clinic, you need to have every touch point during the week to create this transformation. Our people, they have trained with motivational interview. They are used to have this nudging of our client to this transformation. Because again, at the end, you want that the client is transformed and you want to create this new, let's call it, Filippo wrote the new book, Longevity Mindset, right?
In Italian again.
In Italian again, but the name is Longevity Mindset. You want that they live with a different mindset about longevity, which is, I always say, with a modern medicine, which we all like, and I think that are very important, not with the pro-inflammatory lifestyle that we have today, but with a pro-longevity lifestyle. This is why you want clients to live with this idea.
Kate?
We employ a coaching model throughout kind of everything that we do. So the client journey with us starts with them exploring what their goals are in terms of their own health and longevity and why they came to a longevity clinic and what they're hoping to achieve. And ultimately, it's about getting them to create some kind of tangible benefit that they are going to get from this process. And they have to, and it takes time. Normally, when people first arrive, some of them maybe are already enthusiasts and they have something in mind. But for a lot of people, it's like, oh, you know, I read about this thing and I think maybe this is something I should do. Maybe I'm worried about something. But ultimately, we work with them and it's a long process. And it's something that our coaches do and it's something that our nutritionists will do. It's something that doctors will do. Employing motivational interviewing techniques is to help them sort of create this vision in their heads about what it is that they want to achieve and helping them identify what are their obstacles in terms of achieving, because ultimately we're all kind of creating a program for them. So out of the core pillars of good health, we're going to be telling them how to improve their diet, how to exercise more, what exercises they should be doing. We'll be identifying weaknesses in their physiology from the testing that we do. A lot of it will kind of be broadly frameworked around things that they've heard before, but they're probably not deploying in the right way. Some of the help will come with the personalization that they receive because the recommendations are so targeted for them that it removes the noise. But a lot of it is also about keeping their eye on the prize and what is their prize at the end of it all. What's the joy that they're going to discover from the process?
Absolutely.
George?
Yeah. So we offer programs, you know, which are short, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I don't know, whatever. So it's a pit stop in everybody's life, okay? So we don't, like yourself, we don't have this kind of continuity. We have intensity in 1 week. That's what we offer, intensity. But the way we do it is we deliver as an experience. And I think people understand experiences. And then they sort of carry on They're trying to carry on this transformation they have in 1 week, 2 weeks into their everyday life. But the key here when they go back is accountability. You know, you need to do the work. You remember Nike, 1970s, just do it. You know, you need to have the discipline. You need to do. You need to have vision. You need to project yourself into the future, how you want to be. So this is the responsibility of each one of us. We try to educate. Medical doctors is a big problem. You know, what is a longevity doctor? Well, I mean, is a traditional doctor that now is moved to the new field. You know, we find all kind of problems, you know, in here, but we're trying to select people who sort of can inspire and engage the guests to take responsibility for themselves. It's a big issue, all this. Yeah, I like your strategy. I mean, we're doing the same things. We also have 2 hubs, and we're trying to expand as well. I think that's the only way we can do things. So we're trying to facilitate clients in different big cities to come and do something for themselves. But at the end of the day, it's all about lifestyle. And we're trying to educate people on circadian rhythmicity, the stress axis, and the importance of exercise. These are the tools we're using to give as education to our clients.
So how do you motivate your clients?
So
That's
that's a great question. Even when I was a practicing orthopedic surgeon, that was a challenge, getting people to do rehab even after a complex shoulder.
So as a surgeon, you don't see your clients actually regularly. You don't want to see them actually ideally.
If you're an orthopedic surgeon, you want to see them once every 5 years when they hurt or break something. That's your goal. So, look, I think ultimately, you know, we start with the goals for the client. We ask them what their goals are because ultimately we have to start at a base. We just surveyed all of our clients recently, and it was actually very insightful. It was eye-opening to me. We actually, probably the biggest chunk of our population is actually the worried well, right? The people that don't know, and so they're concerned. And I think, you know, we do give them that underlying comfort level. But we're not, you know, a week-long experience. I think having an experience is great. Matter of fact, that's what most people will pay for today. But we really have a very condensed process where you can come in about a half a day, go through most of the testing. But we do a lot through telemedicine. And part of that is, you know, our goal at Fountain was to really create a data platform where we could go to our medical colleagues on the other side of the aisle in traditional, what I would call sick care, and bring data to them to be able to prove that what we do over time will work. And so that effort, which started 5 years ago, is actually starting to bear fruit for the first time because we're actually seeing healthcare systems in the U.S. that are asking about longevity, asking how do I start a longevity program. And interestingly, they actually have every tool in the arsenal in their 4 walls. They just don't know how to use them, right? They're not using an MRI to look at the whole body imaging for potential pathology. What they're looking for, they're using the MRI to look at a knee or a head or you know, a spine, right? So it's disease specific. So I think over time, as we build a bigger and bigger database, we'll get there. When it comes to our clients, I think having, you know, one of the things we've done with AI, which we think is super important, we're finalizing this component of it, is to have a voice-enabled AI, and it's a coach. And so we have an agentic layer, and you have all your data loaded that's very specific to you. And so what we find is on the digital leash to continue to motivate the clients, we have health coaches and all that work remotely, but the AI turns out to be much more effective because it's the question you forget to ask when you walk out of the doctor's office that you can't remember to ask, and you don't really want to bother the doctor or call back, or you don't have time and you don't want to be put on hold. And so the AI has the information for you. Now, all that information is clinical decision support. It's in a private data cloud. It actually comes from the medical record and what we've done for the patient. So we're not, you know, deviating from what the physicians have signed off on. But the ability for patients for the first time to have agency over their data and be able to query their data is what we found literally in the last year that we've employed this is the compliance rate goes up significantly because they can now measure and see what they're doing. It is a lift, though. I will be the first to admit. Trying to get people to do behavioral change is probably the hardest. And interestingly, I was in Greece about a year and a half ago, and I went through where Hippocrates had his original, you know, healthcare area. And it's not particularly new what we're doing today. It's been going on for about 4,000 years.
Exactly.
Diet, exercise,
Yeah.
hot plunge, cold,
Yeah.
all of this
Sauna.
stuff, right? It's all been
But
going
now
on
we
for
have research to confirm
that we have research, but there have been a lot of traditions that are out there that have been out there for a really long time because they work,
Yeah.
right? So I think that that's the idea here is, in our Western, scientific, centered area of life, to be able to prove what you do works is super important, and that comes from the scientific tradition. And so I think we'll marry these at some point and hopefully convince our sick care colleagues that they need to spend more time keeping people healthy than chasing disease.
And I think this is something that, we see also in Europe with Alpine medicine, FX Myers, and a few of those traditional medicine, but also, including TCM and also Ayurveda, they have been focusing on longevity for thousands of years. It's just now we're not so sure about some of those research.
But it works, Joanna. I mean, we have introduced for years now traditional Chinese medicine, So at one point we're stressing the body, then we're stimulating the vagus nerve, the parasympathetic, using traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture, and it works very well. At the end, you develop autonomic nervous system fitness.
And some of your clients will be much more open to TCM, and some of them to molecular, solutions. And we see the same. I would like to stay on ChatGPT, but I wanted to mention shortly about the discussion we had with Katie yesterday. We have clients coming, they want to test, they're worried, microplastic, heavy metal, and then they want to have plasmapheresis or any other kind of space technology solutions to clean out the microplastic. What I actually don't know is for the for plasmapheresis, we're using actually plastic tubes to clean microplastics. So and the best and most effective solution is actually sauna, but it's so boring, and so far it's one of the most tested technologies, and sometimes the easiest solutions are the best solutions. But coming back to your ChatGPT, and we have clients, and this is something in the last few months, I would say, coming. On one side, they are paranoid because we are doing the genetic testing, epigenetic, what is happening with their data. We're in Switzerland, so data is super protected. And then they put their data into ChatGPT and come back with their own recommendations and asking the doctor, what do you think about this? So what do you think is how the role of doctor is going to change? Or on one side, two questions. How is your clinic focusing on AI use and also maybe using the ChatGPT solutions? We are also, by the way, creating our own version of longevity ChatGPT, but it's closed. And how do you think the role of the doctor is going to change with all those?
That's a great question. I tell you what we are doing now, and then again I have a point on this, which I also would like to hear my colleagues here. What we are doing, we are using AI, of course, to simplify. We have, if you do our full check, you have a lot of tests, so AI is helping us to put it together. We are using, because then the problem with all these biomarkers that we have today is how the doctor is able to understand this biomarker. And AI is a great help to put together this biomarker. We are using a lot of AI with imaging, which is, of course, super interesting. But then I come back to your point. I put all my stuff into ChatGPT and I say, ChatGPT, you give me please, based on the 4 pillars of clinical peri, medical, nutrition, well-being, and movement, a plan for the next 100 days on what I should do. And I get a beautiful 100-page. But then the question is that I don't use it. I do the first 2 days, fantastic, look at this, but then I don't do it. So last study on health app, 80% drop rate in the first 100 days. 80% drop rate. So I think not only doctor, therapy, psychologists, all the people, again, it's our also business model, so of course I'm defending it. You need human to change human. I think the human part must be important, is important.
And the follow-up,
the follow-up to generate the change.
Kate?
We use AI more and more, as I'm sure everybody else is, not just for our marketing efforts, but also for analyzing client data, making sure that we can work faster, we can work smarter, and we're creating an agent for the client as well, so they can query their own data in a similar way as I'm sure you all are. And it's fascinating because you can do so much more, like productivity and personalization really increases. But as we all know, for working with agents, everything the how good the answer is depends on how good the question is, and agents also make mistakes, and there the human is still invaluable, because if the end user doesn't know how to ask the question, the answer is going to be pointless. And so I think there's still going to be a very important role in human expertise in making sure that those systems are aligned with what the ultimate outcome needs to be. Because AI can feed you a lot of stuff, and all of those large language models, they're trained to tell you what you want to hear. So it can really lead you down like a weird path sometimes if you start asking it, very specific questions, and you need somebody to cut across that layer of BS and make sure that you're getting a response that's going to be useful for you.
George.
We are not on AI.
But you have clients coming with ChatGPT recommendations.
Maybe, but we are. So what we do is we work on the consultation, on the human touch, the story, because you learn a lot when you have a conversation, doctor-client, client-doctor. You learn a lot about how they live their lifestyle, because at the end they will go back to the normal reality, to the reality. So you need really to assess, prioritize, and give them input on to carry on doing the things that work for them. We do a lot of diagnostics, but they take time to analyze, so the client is gone. Until next time they come, because we have a high retention. And then we compare, and we see trends. And then you can also support them, modify things that you do. But basically, we are based on the consultation. I think this is a very powerful thing. Mm-hmm. At some point, we'll use AI, I think, because it's really, really helpful. But
I think most of us are actually doing. I mean, one of the things with longevity clinics, longevity doctors should really have the time to the client. At least this is my perception, but because I think also your clients are valuing that the doctor has time, not 15 minutes behind the computer, but has time to ask you the question.
And that's why they come for. Mm-hmm. And they need. I see people who want to talk, and they tell you the story of their life. They cry during the consultation with issues they have, family issues. I mean, we're humans. We create emotions. Emotions create molecules. We keep to ignore that. And this is very, very important. This is aging us. If you create negative emotions, negative molecules in your body. So, you need to deliver the high tech and all things we discussed, but you need also to deliver it with human touch, with warmth,
Yeah, so I think, look, when it comes to AI, I think that physicians are going to have to learn to adjust, because it's coming. I will tell you, it doesn't matter.
How are they adjusting today?
Poorly, I would say. Now, I would say, with one caveat, over 40% of U.S. physicians now are using open evidence. So they've immediately gravitated to it. I mean, there's 4,000 medical articles published every single day around the world. There's no physician on the planet that can keep up with the data. And by the way, probably a third of those articles are garbage. Okay, so you have to have an AI to sort through the statistics to make sure even the statistics are correct. So I think that where we're going to go with this is, and I'll use my pilot analogy because I've been flying planes for years. I remember when my father, who was an airline pilot early on in the 1960s, when autopilot and flight management systems really came into vogue, and he was a Navy pilot, right? U.S. Navy pilot, former Vietnam, fighter pilot. He was pretty convinced he could always fly the airplane better. And even with the autopilot, he would say, I can shoot the approach 10 times better than that. Mm-hmm. Today, you don't get in a jumbo jet where the pilot even touches the controls. Yeah. He manages the system. And this is where we're going in healthcare. I think the human component is super important because you're going to have to make that bridge. But as far as the AIs are concerned, they're going to free physicians up from the tedium of doing documentation to be able to concentrate on the things that they do best, which is real empathy and being able to coach. Because that's the one thing the AIs don't do well. Now, we've spent tens of millions of dollars building out our platform. It's currently in use at the University of Indiana in oncology because it was where it got its kind of start. But what is important is that, building the platform, putting it in a private data cloud, don't educate ChatGPT, because the problem with it is that ChatGPT is prone to hallucination, but you can create a system where you have two competing AIs or three that argue with each other, and they have to agree at a certain point of view before they actually give you a result. That's eliminated a lot of the hallucinations for us. But I will tell you that our clinicians, if I took our AI away from them today, they would probably all walk out, because what they use it for is improving the patient experience. Before they engage with the patient, they ask, tell me what the patient's most recent visit was, what's going on with the patient, can you, give me a summary. So when they get on the telemedicine call, which is what we do a lot of, they're totally up to speed. Right, and by the way, on our clinical team, our clinical staff, the AI is now saying, hey, by the way, you forgot to do this follow-up. You forgot to do this. This is part of the care model, and they didn't get their nutrition coaching, or by the way, the nutritionist was supposed to order this for them. And we normally used to track that through a standard EHR. EHRs are woefully inadequate for doing long-term patient follow-up. And since we do this one-year membership, we have to do those touch points. And by the way, that's not what regular medicine is used to. We're used to go to the doctor's office, get your prescription, and walk out the door. And then you're pretty much gone from sight and out of mind until you show up again. And so this idea of getting doctors to actually follow somebody over a course of a year is a re-education for our physicians. But the AI has made a huge component of, made that a lot easier for them. And even our nurses use it. I mean, they go to Zori, which is our AI, before they talk to the patient every single time. And we can see their use patterns. And it's really quite remarkable. There is a demographic change too, because I will tell you our older physicians are maybe not as enamored with the AI. Our younger physicians are totally enamored with it, and more tech, more data-centric, I think. But I think over time, I think physicians will get time back for the first time. And I think they can go back to doing what they originally were trained to do, which is actually heal and spend time with patients and converse with them, but better informed.
I actually think, as if I may add, is our client service people probably use it the most compared to all of the practitioners, because for them it's really important to stay abreast of everything that's happening in that client's universe. So they use it to connect the dots, which ultimately is where I'd like the practitioners to get to. But the client service people are there first because they're always the first point of contact with every single client.
And one thing I think that you mentioned, unless you wanted to add
No,
something.
I just want to say, then it's impossible for a human being today to understand the correlation with all these diagnostics and anticipate what could happen. So, I mean, it's...
But also, I think what changed since when we started about 6 years ago in the sector, where the perception of longevity clients, of longevity clinics, was it is going to be for people over 60. I mean, we couldn't be more wrong. Most of our clients are around 35 to 55 and actually getting younger. And we have now children. We have, since 2 years, we have longevity for kids, and we are starting at 8, but really not biomarkers of aging or stem cells, but we are really looking at how to design their health journey. And I think, how is it with you? Because this is also something that also with AI, if they will have agents, I mean, you don't see people over 70 talking to an agent, but I think somebody mentioned demographics. I think this is also the how we use the available. And I know, George, you don't like maybe talk too much about the biomarkers and the high
No,
tech.
but we do see, I mean...
but it's more about motivation, the customer difference.
Yeah. And we do see younger people coming to our clinics, I think also... and with a proactive approach, and they want to, they think of data, how they can optimize, they use the data, wearable technology, I mean, we
sleep,
see...
stress,
Sleep, yes, all the,
they
are in all of this, and how they can get better performance, in their everyday life. We see that.
So maybe I will ask, does anybody have questions? But please question, not comments, because we can talk to our guests later on. Yes, Antonella. We can't hear you.
My question is a simple one. We navigate, you're talking about an ecosystem that it's for early adapters, right? Your clients are early adapters. They are prone to...
No.
They are prone
I wouldn't
to
say early adapters.
Innovation, and that they are belonging to, it's not a democratized approach.
Yeah.
So being early adapters means that they can, receive innovation in a very fast way. But when about solutions that are not on label, very often we have solutions that we can offer to our patients or clients, and we know that it might help, but it's not reimbursed, it's not allowed, it is off-label. How do your doctors navigate these circumstances? Because this is where I have problems myself as a doctor, where I know that I can do something, but then I send this person to that clinic or to that colleague, and the answer is no, it's not on label, no, it's not available. So do your clinics allow for special path for patients that might have a solution or might benefit of something, and they can...
But I think if this didn't come out, we are not really off-label clinics. I mean, we
No,
are
I
kind
think
of
it
most.
was
But I
mentioned
think
earlier.
it's a good question.
Yeah.
It's a good
I
question.
can
It's a
answer
very good question.
that, because we do off-license prescribing, as long as there is a clear clinical need, and there's a regulatory pathway in how this gets documented internally. And this doesn't apply broadly. You can't just bring in something that's not licensed in the UK at all and start giving it to somebody. But there are solutions you can offer people. I'm thinking of like things like HRT and TRT, et cetera, that you can offer to people if there's a clear clinical need. If there's no clinical need, you can't do it as a wellness therapy. So there's a big difference here, I think, sometimes between the market perception of what you can and can't do, because there are circumstances in which you might be offered specific therapies, even if they're off license, but it's not going to be for your general well-being.
Okay. So we're talking about Hippocrates. It's called prescriptio magistralis. No? So this is part of what doctors should do. So of course we have to do. We have doctors which are doing it. Then, you know, if you have 2,000 clients per year and you are doing a therapy of label to 1,900, then you have a big problem. So this is what we are absolutely not doing. But I think that is part of the doctor if there are exceptional cases which are to use the off-label prescription. Sure.
Yeah, so you would love our physicians. Our physicians are renegades. I can just tell you, they will do everything that they can as long as it's FDA cleared or FDA trialed, and we do use things off-label. Now, the state of Florida recently has allowed stem cell therapy without FDA approval, and it's one of the few states now and it will actually sweep across the United States, because the regulatory bogged down to get through the FDA is too long for most of the technologies that people really want that have efficacy. So what we do, and our physicians are totally bought in. First of all, they have to pass, safety. We have to look at efficacy. We have a science committee that reviews everything. Dr. Helen Messier is our chief medical and science officer, MD, PhDs. We've had several of those. They're all trained in the scientific method. They've all come from traditional backgrounds in healthcare, but they're willing to push the envelope on technologies. Now, we don't use things that have any issues. If it doesn't have safety, doesn't have efficacy, and we can't regulatorily allow it, we won't do that. But there are a lot of therapies available. And one of the advantages about our physicians working inside Fountain is that we're not dependent on insurance. We're not dependent on a regulatory or an insurance or a third-party payer approving the payment. Our clients come to us because they're looking for an alternative. And you can imagine, you live in the Tony Robbins, Peter Diamandis ecosystem. Our clients are about, how do I get the very best out of life? How do I live at the top of my game? And to the extent that our average age is 52, and they're business owners, and they want to be vibrant for as long as they possibly can. And we're very heavily on muscle mass and exercise. They have to do the work, but it is a motivated client population, but they also want to know what's next. What can I do that's even better? Now, sometimes that means reining people in, okay, because that certainly can be a daunting challenge when, we have the biohackers, and they come to us with 1 million peptides they want to try. And the problem is there are probably 5 that have got decent clinical studies and outcomes, and then there are probably the same 5 have been at least blessed by the FDA in the United States. But we try to guide people in the right direction, but our clinicians are on the edge. And one of the reasons is they're all functional medicine trained. So they're root cause analysis doctors. And almost every one of them left traditional healthcare out of frustration.
Yeah, and this is your priority, as you're saying, in most of the... So as we are getting a little bit past time, so what would be the last question to all of you? Where do you want your clinic to be in 5 to 10 years? Or how you think what you do is going to change in 5 to 10 years?
Very quickly, I believe that this completion of the ecosystem, I think, again, where we are very poor is the follow-up and really create transformation to our client. We have 64% of our clients that are coming back, so we have a lot of touch base. This is majority of the time once per year. This is not enough if we really want to transform their life. And I think this idea really of having an impact should drive us more and more in the future. And we need to find really a way to make it happen.
Thank you.
I think technology is going to make us faster and even more proactive, and I think that's what we're really kind of focusing on, is how do we get people information quicker, how do we get feedback quicker, how can we react more quickly to like live data streams. I think that's what we're really excited about.
George?
I agree with Simone. I mean, from intensity, we need to move to continuity. I think that's the key, yeah?
To have more touch points with your
More
clients.
touch points, yeah. I think. But the problem is, in players like us, this requires very big investments, and operationally is very difficult.
True.
Okay.
So, we're the most, if 10 years from now, if Fountain Life and our protocols and our digital data platform were embedded in the US healthcare system, that would be a win for us. Because I remind people, longevity is a fringe movement compared to traditional healthcare. And if you talk to any physician who's traditionally trained and you start talking about longevity, they just kind of roll their eyes, because they've not been trained in it. And understand, they go to medical school to learn pathologic physiology, not how to keep you well. Doctors in the US are not paid to keep you healthy.
Yeah.
Maybe
They don't get paid to create health.
That's exactly. So maybe we should pay them to keep you healthy, take money away when you get
Like the
sick,
Chinese
right?
and
And it might be a different, but this is where we are. But I think that we are at a breaking point in the U.S. Okay, we cannot spend any more. 70% of bankruptcies in the United States were due to medical debt last year. Hospital costs continue to explode out of control, and as of yet, nobody has figured out how to address the problem, and we keep talking about bending the cost curve when we need to crush the cost curve. And we've shown studies to some of the politicians, and we'll see what the uptake is. Right now, we looked at 1,000 members, and by detecting disease super early with some of this advanced technology and treating it at that point versus the cost of when you become symptomatic, when chronic disease manifests, you can lower healthcare costs by about 60 to 70%, including the cost of the testing when you measure across the entire cohort. So it is intuitively obvious to me as a pilot, because I wouldn't get in an airplane, if I didn't do my safety checks, if I wasn't sure the sensors were working. I would make sure that I don't want a problem at 40,000 feet. But we chase disease in the US. We always chase disease because we need to move the paradigm from symptom-based medicine, which, by the way, by the time you get that chronic disease and it becomes symptomatic, it's always heavy disease burden, to a proactive approach while you're, quote, walking around feeling, quote, healthy. And nobody's as healthy as they think they are, right? I mean, we know this. We look at our data, and 14% of people have a significant actionable finding that needs to be addressed. It could be asymptomatic heart disease. And the point is, until we start going to that approach, we're never going to solve the downstream problem. And so our goal, and I hope over the next 5 to 10 years, we find partners in the US healthcare system that are interested in transitioning the model, because we are totally at a breaking point in the US. And I don't know which direction it's going to break. It will either break to where the government takes over all of it, and at that point, probably all innovation stops for a significant component. But then the other side of that is we can't continue to allow families to go bankrupt because of the cost of having to go to the emergency room for maybe something that wasn't necessary.
So thank you very much, and please continue asking questions to our super experts during the lunch and break. So thank you very much for having us.
Joanna.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joanna.
Very nice.